I want to start this off with saying I love games. I do. I think anyone watching this channel knows that, and if you're watching it, you probably also love games, unless you're a journalist that just wants to see what I say next, because you don't like games, you're a journalist. What's going on with the video game industry right now is a little bit concerning, and watching these expos, I go in with the best intentions and hoping that there'll be something that I can take out of it to feel like we're moving forward in the industry. But the Summer Game Fest 2024 that just took place was anything but. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. And I watched this Summer Game Fest brought to us by Geoff Keighley and the Game Awards guy. All this stuff that he was talking about, all these games coming out. And I'm just like, man, it's just not hitting the right notes. Smash JT. Hit that subscribe, give me a like, and check out SmashJT.com for the full article breaking down why I felt like Summer Game Fest 2024 kinda sucked. It wasn't without its benefits, though. There were some good things coming out of it, some games that genuinely appealed to me that I was interested in, games that I plan on purchasing and playing and hopeful that they're good. But overall, overwhelmingly, the entire presentation was just, it felt like a long, very long, drawn-out advertisement for the video game industry. And what I mean by that is there was a lot of money spent to get these games on stage. And it had me asking, first off, why? Like, where's all that money going to? I'm sure it costs money to rent the venue and the space and get all the stuff set up and all that. But the pricing structure for this was unsustainable. According to Esquire, running a trailer during Summer Game Fest main show this year cost $250,000 for 1 minute, $350,000 for 1.5 minutes, $450,000 for 2 minutes, and $550,000, over $500,000, okay, for 2.5 minutes. You would think that this is something on par with a Super Bowl commercial almost, and it's like, it's Summer Game Fest. It's not even E3. Like, this can't really even hold a candle to what used to be, but I guess if there's nothing else in its place, he can demand that kind of money. But it speaks to a much larger issue with the video game industry in general. As the gaming community tries its best to navigate through uncharted waters in the current abrasive climate, major events like E3 have fallen by the wayside, making room for new endeavors like Geoff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. And despite my somewhat high hopes and anticipations going into it, yeah, I know I should have known better, the latest iteration of Summer Game Fest has left me feeling underwhelmed and questioning its sustainability. The prices that these developers were paying just to get shown off made me think, why do games cost this much? Why are they spending this much money? Do they really even need to do it? Especially when you take a step back and you look at especially Nintendo Directs, which Nintendo was obviously absent from this presentation because Nintendo's realized themselves they don't need to spend that kind of money to get the views, to get the viewership, to get the attention on their games. Just do a Nintendo Direct presentation on YouTube. Bing, bang, boom, you got your attention and people are interested. That's really all it takes. This day and age. It's something that I was touching about in my previous video, talking about why we don't really even need journalists anymore. Everything is directly on YouTube, and it's so obvious. It's right in front of us, and people are so stuck in their ways of yesteryear that they feel like they have to bring it forward into the next generation. It's like, no, there are better avenues to get the information, to process the information, to discuss the information. Listen to YouTubers, listening to people on websites, or even individual opinions on Twitter. There's a variety of people that you are allowed to follow in the modern era that you don't need to be chained to a specific corpo to find out what they want you to think. You can watch a YouTuber that can tell you what interests them, and maybe your interests align with them, and you can form a relationship. You can watch their videos and feel like you're getting somewhere. That's what gaming ultimately is all about. And we've reached that point as gamers where we can come full circle to have conversations about the games. And that is exciting. Although journalists and people that run these shows definitely don't want to talk about that side of things because there's not really much money for them involved in that. But that wasn't even the biggest issue I had with Summer Game Fest, because even putting all that aside, I can still look at Summer Game Fest as, okay, maybe there's something I could take out of this. Maybe there's something new about gaming turning a corner and shedding new light on a situation that might be interesting to me. And I sat down and started watching it, and I'm just like, bro, CG after CG after CG trailer, all the CGI, there's no gameplay. Like, barely any gameplay. And I think that got to a much deeper problem rooted with gaming going somewhat mainstream. Is there's a lot of casuals out there that are easily convinced to purchasing a product just based off of the shiny look on it. And oh, that's cool, that's hip, I want to buy that and talk about it with my friends because it looks like the coolest thing, instead of showing gameplay. And when they did, this was the other problem. When they did show gameplay, oftentimes there was music overlaid on top of it. So you couldn't even hear the sound effects or get any kind of aura for the environment and feeling for the vibe of the game. And the swords clashing off of shields or magic spells or echoes walking footsteps in an underground layer. There was none of that. It's just playing music, blaring over it. It's like, one of the biggest aspects of gaming is the sounds to the game and how it makes you feel and captivated by the environment and the atmosphere it creates. And I feel like that's getting lost in this big corporate AAA, spend all this money, make it look as big as possible, and then just tell people to buy your product because product good, buy product. Geoff Keighley went on Twitter and asked people what they would grade today's Summer Game Fest with an A, B, C, or D, or below. And this kind of blew my mind. First off, I do appreciate Geoff Keighley being very open about this, saying, hey, how would you grade the presentation we put together? I want feedback. That's good. That's a good thing. I want to acknowledge when things are in a good light, too. I don't want to just focus on the negatives. I appreciate what Geoff Keighley is trying to do for the video game industry. But the problem is, it always goes back to greed and corpo and making as much money as possible and showing off AAA games and costing as much money as possible instead of focusing on the passion of the games, getting to the nitty-gritty of why gamers care about games in the first place. But anyways, the Twitter poll, Keighley himself revealed that nearly 68% of his followers rated the event with a C grade or worse. I rated it a C, but many people also graded it a D or below, which that's pretty rough. You're talking about nearly 70% of the people that watched it thought that this thing was average at best, but most people thinking it was below average, and that ain't good. While it's understandable that not every game can be presented with extensive gameplay demos, the balance once again seems skewed too far towards flashy, non-interactive content. The big guns in towns, the EAs of the world, the Ubisofts of the world, spending all this money from giant corporations to show their games off, and people are left with, great, we got an update on Skate that we don't know when we're going to play it anymore or what's happening with it, but they're still working on it. Great, I guess. That's cool. Oh, Star Wars Outlaws? Cool. That game that you have this pricing tier structure that's absolutely bonkers, bananas, ridiculous, that has DEI injected into it and doesn't even have the game on the disc. You want us to get excited about that one? That one sucks, by the way, because I actually really wanted to like that. It looked so good, but all these external factors surrounding the game just make me lose any kind of interest at all in it because of that. And then you have things like Alan Wake 2, where the game doesn't have a physical edition. And they go on stage to announce a physical edition. And I'm just like, that's what gaming in 2024 has come to, where we're going on stage and that's the big reveal. Is it's getting a physical edition? That is what deserves stage time? Yikes! But I do want to focus on the standouts for me that were fairly interesting games. The biggest standout of all wasn't even as part of Summer Game Fest. It was from Day of the Developers following the show. This game called UFO 50 really took my attention. Like, I was all in when I saw these creators talking about it. The same creators of Spelunky, Downwell, and a few other indie games that a lot of people have heard of. UFO 50 is a collection of 50 single and multiplayer games that span a variety of genres, from platformers and shoot-'em-ups to puzzle games and roguelites and RPGs. The goal was to combine a familiar 8-bit aesthetic with new ideas and modern game design. And this game, like I said, I was watching it, I'm like, yes, This is what we want as gamers, at least speaking for myself. This blew me away. I'm like, wow, it's not just the tried and true formula of going the generic route of making an indie game. It's literally 50 full-fledged games, some of them arcade games, some of them more RPG and involved, where you have to work through them and they're interweaved and connected. The storyline, all of them goes together. I'm just like, this is perfect. It's retro vibes, but it's not playing too much on that. It's not leaning so heavily on retro that it's like, oh, these developers don't know how to make a real game, so they just say, oh, retro inspired. No, these are good developers with a history, track record of quality games, putting together what looks to be potentially a Game of the Year candidate from me. And I know that sounds ridiculous with all these flashy graphics from all these other games out there, but no, this is what it's all about with gaming. This is excitement. This is passion. This is why I love games. And the fact that this didn't get major screen time and playtime during the actual Summer Game Fest event is a tragedy. It really is. It goes to show that it's just a corporate advertisement. The show itself, it's not showing off the games that people care about and want to play. It's just who can pay us the most and what screen time they're going to get in between the advertisements that squeeze into this show. And speaking of advertisement, I got to mention this chicken game. I don't even know what the hell this was, but it was so obnoxiously bad that it dragged the entire show down. And they squeezed this ad in between other ads, in between trailers that are paid for, basically ads. So the entire show is one big ad. It's crazy to me. Like, if the games were showing off something that was spectacular or intricate designs of the game that made you want to be interested in it, I get it. But the vast majority of the games they showed off did not do that. I do want to talk about some of the ones that did catch my eye, though. First off, I'm not a big Mighty Morphin Power Ranger fan. I never really watched the show back in the day. But I do appreciate a good fight 'em, beat 'em up game when I see it. And this one, a 5-player co-op beat 'em up game, Power Rangers, it looks fantastic. And coming from someone who's not even a huge Power Ranger fan, I love Turtles beat 'em ups, and this kind of strikes me along the lines of those kinds of games. So it's one that I'll definitely be checking out when it hits stores. One of the things was with these games was a lot of them didn't even have like time frames or release dates, or they were just some vague date, 2025 in the future. We don't know when this is coming out, when that's coming out. Here's just the cool trailer of it. And that was another frustration, but I digress. Other games that were interesting to me that caught my eye, this multiplayer prison escape game called Cuff Bus, where you try to break out of prison, looting for tools, and it looks like a maze adventure co-op type game that really, it just looks fun. It looks like the type of game that I would enjoy playing with either my son or some friends online. This is what I love about gaming. Something like this one. Other notable standouts were Killer Bean, which it just cracked me up. The art style, it kind of felt like a mixture between Hitman and Grand Theft Auto with a comical cartoon style to it. This one definitely has a ton of potential as well. And then going to the more heartfelt stuff, a game like Deer and Boy definitely struck some chord with me. It felt like a game that you could really connect with. And those were like the lower tier indie games that I really enjoy the effort put in by a smaller studio. But then you look at the bigger games and I'm like, it just feels so generic. There's no risk anymore. Except for Dragon Ball. And I'm a big Dragon Ball, original Dragon Ball series fan, but I never really got into Dragon Ball beyond Goku as the young kid. Like, that was the extent of my experience with the show. But watching this, I was like, oh my god, the graphics look surreal. The adventure, the storyline, going through the entire trials of Dragon Ball Z and everything about it. Again, I don't know too much about Dragon Ball, but this game makes me want to learn more about it, and it looks so freaking good. But for the most part, that was really it as far as games that stood out to me personally. Over a 2.5 hour presentation? I just named 4 or 5 games? 2.5 hour presentation, okay? It was very long, very dragged out, very obnoxiously unnecessary as far as time is concerned. And I feel like they do that on purpose to maximize profits, to put as much on show as possible, to make as much money as possible. And it goes back to the, what are we doing here? Are we showing games off because gamers love games? Or are we trying to make as much money as possible off of gamers to pretend like we care about games? And unfortunately, it felt like Summer Game Fest was more of the latter. But regardless of that, at least there was what felt like something that could be for everyone, even if it wasn't necessarily for me. I just would have liked more gameplay. The CGI just kind of, it's such a turnoff when a game is getting unveiled or shown off, or even shown off for a second or third time, and they're still just showing CGI cutscenes. It's like, it just doesn't do it for me as a gamer. I'm not buying a game to watch a movie. I'm buying a game to play the game. So I want to know what it feels like to play the game. I don't give a shit about a cutscene. But ultimately, that was my feeling and my takeaway from Summer Game Fest 2024. Was it the worst thing ever? No. It had a lot of redeeming qualities. But overall, I went into it like, yeah, no, I'm not going to plop my ass down and watch this show for almost 3 hours and maybe be entertained by something. That's not really how it works. I'd rather spend that time playing a video game or watching a movie. And maybe if something's big enough, I'll watch a recap somewhere and see it. Because this is just, it's too much. It's too long. It's too drawn out. It's just not worth it. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. You need a more succinct presentation. Like a Nintendo Direct, where it's never much longer than, what's the longest Nintendo Direct? Like 30 minutes? Most of them are like 10 to 12 minutes going over bang, 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 bang. Here's the game. Here's the gameplay of it. Here's when it's coming out. Here's what you can expect out of it. Here's the sounds, the music, the graphic, the interface, all this stuff presented in a concise manner to the end viewer. That's what we want. Gamers don't want to waste time and sit down and drink a soda and have their chips and watch a show for almost 3 hours. It's so boring. I feel like they're trying to Hollywoodify the game industry. And speaking of, having that Inside Out advertisement as part of this as well was just so out of place. It's just so weird. There were just so many things that were like, what are we doing here, Geoff? What are we doing? Back to the drawing board. I get it. And if this is making money for you, I'm sure it probably is. If it's making money for you, I get why you'd want to continue doing it. But overall, for the video game industry at large, I don't feel like this is a great thing. And it leans towards a bad direction for the entire industry on the whole down the road. If it keeps going like this, it's not going to end well. At least those are my thoughts on the situation. If you guys want more information or the full breakdown of everything, check out smashjt.com. I have my full article. I will link in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing.
All of you cooped up watching video game announcements. And yes, Chicken does look a lot like Ken Jeong. And today, Chicken is excited to share a new game that Chicken and Chicken's buddies are in called Squad Busters.
Smash,